My name is Juliet Laurent, I'm 62, and I used to be an investigative journalist in Paris. 30 years chasing stories, walking through foggy streets, uncovering secrets that most people would never even imagine. It shaped me, made me sharp, made me vigilant. Now retired, I thought I'd finally taste peace. Mornings sipping coffee by the window, the birds singing in our garden, quiet dinners with my husband Henri. A 65-year-old architect who has always been my anchor, calm and steadfast. We live in an old townhouse on the outskirts of Lyon. Every brick and wall filled with memories, echoes of the life we built together. I thought I'd earned these simple, serene days, but today that peace feels fragile, threatened. Outside, rain lashes against the windows, wind rattles the trees, the sound of water hitting the roof echoing like my own quickening heartbeat. On the living room table sits a small cardboard box. No sender, no note, just one question burning in my mind. For Mother's Day, my daughter sent me a box. My husband said, "Don't open it." I glance at Henri, still reading Le Monde on the porch. He frowns, his voice low and tense. "Juliet, don't open it." But curiosity gnaws at me, part of me aching to see what's inside. The wind whistles, the rain hammers, a strange soundtrack to what is about to unfold. I sense with a shiver that this isn't an ordinary gift. It's a doorway, a gateway into a family drama we could never have imagined, a storm waiting to crash through the calm we thought we'd secured. In that moment, I realize our quiet, orderly life is about to unravel, and nothing will ever feel the same again. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Amélie, our only daughter, had always been a source of pride, a bright spark in our otherwise orderly lives. But over the past decade, that spark had turned into a storm. At 35, she was a failed event planner, drifting from one underwhelming job to another, while her husband Lucas, a free-spirited musician, seemed to view responsibility as a foreign concept. Together, they had transformed our lives into a revolving door of demands, debts, and ultimatums. For years, Henri and I had emptied our retirement savings to keep them afloat, paying rent for their lavish apartment in the heart of Paris, covering extravagant vacations, even funding the ill-fated events Amélie insisted would launch her career. We had hoped our love would guide them, that our support would give them a foundation, but it had only made them bolder, more entitled, more ruthless. That evening the rain poured harder, the wind rattling the shutters when Amélie arrived, her umbrella dripping on the floor like a harbinger of chaos. She stormed in, eyes blazing, a storm of frustration and entitlement. "Mom, you're sitting on a pile of money while your daughter suffers," she shouted, voice sharp and accusing. I could see the tension in Henri's shoulders, the way he clenched his jaw, but I had to hold myself together. "No, Amélie," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger rising inside me. "You've created these debts yourselves. We are not your personal bank." That only seemed to ignite her fury. In one swift, violent motion, she grabbed a Limoges porcelain vase, the one we had received for our 25th wedding anniversary, and smashed it against the corner of the table. Shards flew like tiny daggers, scattering across the polished wooden floor. Lucas leaned against the wall, smirking, his amusement obvious. He treated our household as though it were a stage, and this chaos the performance he had been waiting for. I felt my chest tighten, a mixture of despair and disbelief. Years of sacrifice, nights of worry, and a life spent providing for them, reduced to splintered ceramic and shouted accusations. The memories flashed, paying for her ballet lessons, her private school tuition, the wedding dress I had insisted she choose herself, even when it nearly drained our savings. Every ounce of generosity we had offered had been twisted into entitlement, weaponized against us in moments like this. Amélie spun toward Henri, her voice cutting through the room like glass. "Dad, are you going to let her destroy our family? Chloe and Louis need clothes, a good school." Her words landed with the weight of manipulation, the children's needs used as a shield for her own recklessness. Lucas's smirk widened, enjoying the tension he had helped cultivate. I looked at the photograph on the shelf, a snapshot of our family when Chloe was just 3, a moment of laughter frozen in time. Now it was askew, the frame tilted, a casualty of Amélie's rage. I realized, with a sinking heart, that love and generosity had become weapons she wielded with skill, and Henri and I had been caught defenseless too long. In that instant I knew something had to change. The calm life we had envisioned was gone, replaced by a storm of deceit, entitlement, and manipulation. And for the first time in years, I felt the cold edge of resolve sharpening inside me. Amélie and Lucas didn't linger after the outburst. They left as abruptly as they had arrived. The sound of the front door slamming reverberated through the house like a gunshot, a final punctuation mark to their tirade. I stood frozen for a long moment, listening to the retreating echo, my hands still trembling from the tension. Outside, the rain had intensified, a relentless downpour that turned the cobblestone driveway into a slick river of shadows. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of their Citroën tearing away, its tires throwing up sheets of water in every direction, disappearing into the stormy night. It was more than a car leaving. It felt like a rift had opened, a breach in the fragile walls of our family. Henri remained near the doorway, jaw tight, silent. I could see his fingers clenching into fists, but he said nothing. He always tried to maintain his calm, a pillar of strength, yet even he could not mask the tension that now hung in the air. I sank into the nearest armchair, wrapping my arms around myself as if that could somehow shield me from the unease settling in my chest. The house felt oppressively quiet after their departure, the kind of silence that presses against your temples and makes every thought louder, every memory sharper. I replayed the confrontation in my mind over and over. Amélie's eyes blazing with anger and entitlement. Her voice sharp as broken glass, accusing us of selfishness. Lucas standing back, that smug smile like a spectator enjoying a spectacle of destruction. For years we had tried to guide them, provide for them, even forgive their reckless choices. And yet, here they were, leaving behind a trail of shattered porcelain and veiled threats, demonstrating in the most visceral way that our love and patience had been nothing more than tools for their manipulation. The rain drummed steadily against the windows, a haunting percussion that mirrored my racing thoughts. My heart felt heavy, weighed down by the helplessness of it all. I had devoted my life to uncovering truths, to dissecting motives, to navigating human deceit. And yet, in the confines of our own home, I felt powerless. I was a journalist who had faced corruption and danger across continents, yet I could not control the chaos erupting from my own daughter. As the minutes passed, the tension began to morph into something else. Anticipation, tinged with anxiety. Somewhere, deep in the pit of my stomach, a creeping sense of foreboding took root. I didn't know what Amélie and Lucas would do next, or how far they might go. I thought of all the times they had misused our generosity, of the debts, the lies, the small betrayals that had accumulated over the years. And now, with the storm raging outside and the house unervingly silent, I sensed that this was only the beginning. It was in that uneasy calm that I first noticed it. A small cardboard box on the side table, inconspicuous yet impossible to ignore. My eyes were drawn to it almost against my will, my pulse quickening. I knew immediately it was not a coincidence. It was a message, a prelude to something more, something that would force us to confront yet another level of their audacity. Henri glanced at it too, frowning, sensing the same unease. He didn't speak, but his silence spoke volumes. The storm outside had not only drenched our driveway but had seeped into our home, carrying with it the promise of a confrontation we had not seen coming. I sat there staring at the box, my mind racing. What was inside? Was it harmless, or yet another weapon in their arsenal of manipulation? The wind howled around the eaves, the rain continued its relentless hammering, and I felt that familiar shiver of dread, the kind that tells you the worst is yet to come. In that moment I realized with an unsettling clarity, the battle for our home, our peace, and our sanity was far from over. And somehow, in the center of that storm, a simple cardboard box had become the signal of a new, terrifying chapter. The box sat innocently on the side table, deceptively ordinary in its small cardboard form, but something about it made my skin crawl. Its edges were pristine, corners sharp, nothing to suggest the storm it contained inside. Yet the faint, almost imperceptible noise caught my attention, a soft hiss accompanied by a slight rustling. I froze, my pulse spiking. My hand hovered inches above it, fingers stiff, unwilling yet compelled to touch it. Henri noticed my hesitation and stepped closer. His presence, usually a source of calm, was taut with tension. "Juliet, don't open it," he said, his voice low, measured, but carrying a gravity I had rarely heard from him. "Call the police." I swallowed hard. The weight of those words sank in, a cold dread unfurling in my chest. "Don't open it." The sentence alone could have been enough, but the tiny holes punctured in the lid, barely visible, betrayed the truth. Something alive, something breathing was inside. A creature? Or something far worse? I glanced at Henri, whose eyes were fixed on the box, sharp and unwavering. He could sense my curiosity clashing with my fear, and I could feel his unspoken plea. "Trust me, this is dangerous." As I dialed the Lyon police, my mind flashed back. Weeks ago, Amélie had made an unusual purchase at Le Serpent d'Or, an exotic pet store in Paris. I remembered the receipt appearing on our account, a transaction of €200. At the time, I assumed she was buying toys or small gifts for Chloe and Louis, her children, playful things for innocent amusement. I had never imagined it would be anything dangerous. Yet now, standing here in our quiet living room, listening to that faint, deliberate hiss, a horrifying possibility took shape. That purchase had not been innocent. It had been a prelude. The minutes crawled by, each one amplifying the tension in the house. The rain pounded harder against the windows, a relentless percussion that mirrored my heartbeat. My thoughts raced, jumping between past confrontations, financial manipulations, and the subtle cruelty I had glimpsed in Amélie and Lucas over the years. Every lie, every demand, every calculated smile and sly remark, they were pieces of a puzzle, and now the picture was becoming horrifyingly clear. The police arrived quickly, their presence calming in a way that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. They were followed by Madame Claire Dubois, an expert in exotic wildlife. She carried herself with precise authority, her eyes scanning the room with meticulous awareness. Henri and I stepped back instinctively as she crouched beside the box, her gloved hands steady. She examined the tiny holes, noting the faint movement within. "Keep your distance," she instructed. Her voice was calm, almost clinical, yet carried the unshakable weight of authority. It could be extremely dangerous. With surgical precision, Claire used specialized tools to pry the lid open. The movement inside became sharper, more pronounced, a hiss of warning that made my heart nearly stop. And then I saw it. A small cobra, coiled perfectly, its sleek body tense, its eyes dark and glinting like onyx. Its tongue flicked in and out, tasting the air, measuring the space, alive and ready. The hiss continued, sharper now, deliberate, a sound that seemed to pierce the walls of our home, echoing in my chest. Henri gripped my hand tightly. The raw terror on his face mirrored my own, yet beneath it was a searing anger. I could see his jaw set, his eyes narrowing. He looked at me and said, quietly but firmly, "Juliet, this is deliberate. She meant to scare us. She's testing us." I couldn't speak. Images of Amélie and Lucas flashed through my mind. Their laughter, their smug expressions during previous arguments, the casual way they had dismissed our efforts, our generosity, our rules. And now, the proof of their audacity lay coiled on the table. My own daughter, the girl who had once clutched my hand, who had whispered in my ear during thunderstorms, who had painted pictures of our family, had sent a living threat into our home. Claire carefully transferred the snake into a secure cage, her movements meticulous, unwavering, professional. Every hiss, every flick of the cobra's tongue felt like an accusation, like a message from Amélie and Lucas. "We can reach you wherever you think you're safe." I stepped back, trembling, my mind spinning. This was not just a prank. This was intimidation. A deliberate, cold, calculated act of cruelty from our own daughter. The room was silent after the creature was secured, but the echo of its hiss lingered in my ears. The storm outside had not relented, yet inside, an even greater storm had been unleashed, the realization of Amélie's capacity for manipulation and cruelty. Lucas had encouraged her, no doubt, standing behind the scenes like a shadow, feeding the thrill of our terror. For a long time, Henri and I simply stood there, processing what had just occurred. I thought of the years of sacrifice, our savings drained, nights spent worrying, endless patience extended toward their irresponsibility. And yet, none of it had deterred them. None of it had tempered their audacity. I realized with a chilling clarity that our love had been twisted into a tool, a weapon they wielded with precision. I stared at the caged cobra, now still but ominously alive, and a resolve began to take root inside me. We had been pushed too far. The era of passive tolerance was over. Amélie and Lucas would not have the power to manipulate, intimidate, or control us any longer. And in that tense, heart-pounding moment, I understood something fundamental. Their cruelty, as deliberate and shocking as it was, had also illuminated a path forward. It was time to reclaim control, to draw firm boundaries, and to protect ourselves and the grandchildren from their calculated malice. The box was gone, the cobra secured, but the message was clear, and its echo would haunt us long after. Amélie's audacity had reached a terrifying peak, and the stakes had never been higher. The quiet that followed was deceptive, the calm was temporary. And yet, beneath the fear, beneath the shock, a spark of determination ignited in me. The game had changed. The next moves were ours to make. That night, after the box was removed and the cobra secured, I sat alone in my study, the weight of the day pressing on me like a leaden cloak. Henri had gone to the kitchen to make tea, giving me a moment of silence I desperately needed. The adrenaline still coursed through my veins, a mix of fear, disbelief, and a new raw determination. The audacity of Amélie and Lucas had reached a peak I could no longer ignore. It wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was deliberate cruelty, a game they thought they could play with our lives. And tonight I decided the game was over. I opened my laptop, the familiar hum of the computer almost comforting. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, heart hammering in my chest, as I accessed the accounts, the financial tools that had long been a means for them to exploit my and Henry's generosity. The decision was clear. Every payment, every automatic transfer that had been quietly feeding their reckless, entitled lifestyles was about to be stopped. I began systematically canceling the auto payments, rent for their Paris apartment, subscription services they insisted were essential, even the gym membership Amélie claimed she couldn't live without. Each click, each confirmation, felt like a small liberation, a reclaiming of the power that had been siphoned from us over years. I paused, taking a deep breath, and changed the PIN on our credit cards. The numbers were personal, meaningful. Our wedding anniversary, a memory they could never manipulate. It felt symbolic, a way to reclaim ownership of our lives, our resources, and our peace. I could feel a sense of calm settling over me, replacing the suffocating anxiety that had dominated the past weeks. For the first time in years, I felt unshackled, free from the chains of obligation that Amélie and Lucas had wrapped around us so tightly. It was not just financial freedom. It was emotional, spiritual, a return to autonomy and dignity. By the time I closed my laptop, exhaustion had begun to weigh on me, but it was a different kind of fatigue, one that came from standing up for oneself, from asserting boundaries that had long been ignored. Henri returned with tea, his presence grounding me. He placed the cup gently on the desk, his hand brushing mine. "You've done the right thing," he said quietly, his eyes reflecting pride, relief, and a shared understanding that our lives were shifting. I nodded, a mixture of gratitude and resolve coursing through me. We were reclaiming not just our finances, but our home, our family, and our sanity. Morning came with a sense of fragile serenity, broken abruptly by the shrill ring of the telephone. I answered, expecting perhaps a routine call, but the voice on the other end shattered the calm immediately. "Mom, what have you done? Why isn't anything working?" Amélie's voice was panicked, sharp, accusatory. Behind her I could hear the faint, amused chuckle of Lucas, the sound ringing through the phone like a shadow of their presence. "You can't do this. I can't pay rent. Chloe Lewis." I kept my voice steady, deliberately calm, though inside, a mix of triumph and cold resolve pulsed. "Amélie, I know exactly what you did this time. The gift, the threats, the manipulation, it stops now. The accounts have been changed. You cannot use our money to continue your recklessness or control us." A frantic shriek cut through the line. "You're insane. You'll regret this. You'll never see Chloe and Louis again." I drew a deep, steadying breath, my spine straightening as I felt the final pieces of fear fall away. "You've chosen your actions, Amélie. You've used threats, intimidation, and deceit. You will not manipulate me, or your father, or your children through fear or money anymore. You will not use them as leverage. The era of your control is over. The line went dead, leaving a ringing silence that was almost intoxicating. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to revel in the sense of liberation that had been building since last night. Years of manipulation, financial strain, and emotional warfare had been cut off with a few deliberate decisions. The house felt lighter, the air cleaner, as if a weight we had carried for decades had finally lifted. But that serenity was short-lived. Less than an hour later, we heard the unmistakable sound of pounding at the front door. It started as a sharp, insistent rap, quickly escalating into violent, desperate hammering. My chest tightened as I realized immediately who it was. Henri moved beside me, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. "It's them," he said, voice taut. "They've come." We exchanged a glance that carried decades of shared experience, understanding, and mutual determination. The pounding continued, each strike like a physical manifestation of the chaos they had brought into our lives for so long. "Mom, open the door. You can't do this to us." Amelie's voice sliced through the storm outside, sharp and urgent. Lucas's deep, threatening tone followed, a sinister harmony. "We know your routines, your schedules. You can't hide from us. You're not safe." Henri and I stood firm side by side. I could feel the pulse of anger and fear in Lucas's voice, but it only reinforced the clarity within me. Their power over us had ended. I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of composure, every lesson learned from a lifetime of investigation and confrontation. Henri spoke first, firm and unyielding. "You will not intimidate us. Step away from the door. This is no longer a private matter. It will involve the authorities if you persist." Amélie screamed, a mixture of rage and panic. "You're ruining everything. You're insane. We'll take Chloe and Louis, and you'll regret this forever." I stood taller, channeling every memory of restraint, every ounce of courage and resolve. "Amélie, you chose this path. Threats and intimidation are not negotiation. They are boundaries you have crossed. We will protect ourselves and our grandchildren. Your time of manipulating, demanding, and terrorizing ends now." The door rattled under another furious pounding. I could feel my hands trembling, but not from fear, from the surge of power, of authority reclaimed. Henri's fingers tightened around mine, a silent signal. "We are together, unbroken, unyielding." Lucas shouted, threatening, but I met his gaze in my mind, recalling every instance of cunning, every sly remark, every attempt to control us. "You may think you can intimidate, but your games are over," I said quietly, almost to myself, almost ritualistically, sealing the determination that had formed over nights of sleepless anxiety and stormy confrontations. For a tense, excruciating minute, the pounding and shouting continued, the storm outside mirroring the storm at our doorstep. But Henri and I did not move. We did not react with fear. The house, once a stage for their manipulation, had become a fortress. Finally, the sounds faded, replaced by the echo of rain and the faint retreat of tires on wet cobblestones. They had left for now. I sank into the armchair, exhausted but resolute. The adrenaline drained, leaving a clear-headed, focused determination. The financial power was reclaimed. The threats were confronted. The manipulation was recognized and neutralized. Henri rested his hand on mine, his eyes softening. "We did the right thing," he said quietly. I nodded, feeling the full weight of the past weeks settle into a strange, liberating calm. We had taken action, not out of revenge but out of necessity. For our safety, for the protection of Chloe and Louis, and for the reclamation of our lives. Amélie and Lucas might return. Their threats might persist. But the foundation of control they had relied on was gone. The power now rested with us, steady, deliberate, and unshakable. That day, for the first time in years, I truly felt freedom. Freedom from fear, from manipulation, from the constant pressure of demands. Freedom from the guilt and the weight of parental responsibility that had been twisted into a weapon against us. I realized that empowerment was not just about confrontation. It was about setting boundaries, enforcing them, and standing firm in the knowledge that love does not mean surrender. And in that quiet, heavy stillness after the storm, I understood something fundamental. The courage to act, to reclaim what had been stolen, and to assert the truth of our lives, was not just a choice, it was a necessity. Amélie and Lucas could scream, they could threaten, they could try to bend us to their will. But we were no longer their pawns. The era of manipulation, fear, and coerced obedience was over. And Henri and I would stand together unwavering until they understood that our love, our generosity, and our patience had limits, and those limits had finally been set. The morning after the confrontation, I sat at the kitchen table with a sense of quiet determination. The adrenaline from the night's chaos had settled into a focused clarity. Henri was beside me, his presence steady and reassuring, the embodiment of solidarity that I had come to rely on throughout our lives together. Today we would act, not out of anger, but out of responsibility, to protect the grandchildren and reclaim the boundaries that had been so ruthlessly tested. I reached for the phone and dialed Claire Beaumont, our longtime family lawyer, a woman whose acumen and calm had guided us through countless legal mazes over the years. When Claire answered, her voice carried that familiar mix of sharp precision and reassurance. I explained everything: the cobra, the threats, the manipulation, the financial games that had long been Amélie and Lucas's strategy. Each word was carefully measured, yet charged with the weight of urgency. "Juliet," Claire said after a pause, her tone deliberate, "this is more than a personal dispute. It's a matter of legal protection, financial security, and ensuring the welfare of Chloe and Louis. We will act swiftly." Within the hour, a plan was set into motion. Claire proposed creating a dedicated education trust for Chloe and Louis, a structure that would ensure their financial security and development without allowing Amélie or Lucas to access a single cent. Every tuition payment, every extracurricular expense, every investment in their future would be protected, managed by an independent trustee. It was a meticulous solution, born from years of Claire's experience with high-stakes family disputes. Next, we addressed the legal protections for Henri and me. Claire drafted an immediate restraining order, an official prohibition against any further direct contact or harassment from Amélie and Lucas. It was a document designed not only to safeguard our physical and emotional well-being, but also to signal clearly that their previous tactics would no longer be tolerated. The authority of the law was now firmly on our side, providing a barrier that they could not breach. As I signed the documents, I felt a profound sense of control returning. Each signature, each initial, was a reclaiming of authority that had long been eroded. Henri stood behind me, his hand lightly resting on my shoulder, a silent yet powerful affirmation of partnership. His presence reminded me that we were not alone, that the decades of shared experiences, of mutual support and unspoken understanding, had fortified us against the storm of our daughter's betrayal. Claire then guided us through the process of amending our wills. The changes were precise. Amélie and Lucas would have no claim to the estate or assets meant for Chloe and Louis. Their ability to manipulate, intimidate, or control was legally severed. It was a protective wall, meticulously constructed, one that turned our long-standing vulnerability into structured security. Each clause reinforced the principle that love and support must never be exploited. By the end of the morning, the legal framework was in place. The restraining order was filed, the trust established, and the will amended. Henri and I sat in the living room, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, casting long shadows over the familiar furniture that had once been witnesses to manipulation, but now stood as symbols of reclaimed authority. I allowed myself a moment to breathe, to absorb the significance of what we had accomplished. The fear and uncertainty that had dominated the past weeks began to lift. The house no longer felt like a battlefield. The boundaries were clear, the protections formalized, and the sense of personal and familial security restored. For the first time in years, I could look at Henri across the room and simply see him. Not the tension, not the worry, but the shared strength that had carried us through countless challenges. The children's future was now secure, shielded from the reckless whims of their parents. Chloe and Louis would have the freedom to grow, to learn, and to thrive without the shadow of manipulation. And Henri and I could finally reclaim our home, our peace, and the dignity that had been challenged for too long. As the tension of the past days settled into quiet reflection, I realized that control had returned to my hands, not through fear, not through confrontation alone, but through careful, deliberate action. The law, our planning, and the partnership between Henri and me had created a structure that ensured both protection and empowerment. For the first time in years, I felt an unwavering sense of calm. The storm had passed, the threats neutralized, and the balance restored. Henri squeezed my hand gently. "We did the right thing," he said. His voice was soft but firm, a mirror of the quiet confidence I felt now. I nodded, letting the relief and clarity wash over me. Together, we had not only defended ourselves but had secured the future for the grandchildren and for the peace of our family. The legal actions, the protective measures, and the clear boundaries formed a lasting bulwark, a testament to the fact that love and responsibility, when guided by wisdom and courage, could withstand even the most calculated manipulations. In that moment, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting the garden in gold, I felt a profound sense of liberation. The house, once heavy with tension, now hummed with quiet life. Henri and I could finally move forward, grounded in the knowledge that we had reclaimed what was ours: control, security, and the unshakable bond of family. The storm of deceit and intimidation had ended, and the path ahead was ours to navigate, free, empowered, and unafraid. For 2 days, peace settled over our home like a gentle, reassuring blanket. Morning coffee by the window, walks along the cobblestone streets, dinners uninterrupted by demands or threats. Life felt quietly restored. Amélie and Lucas could no longer manipulate us, and Chloe and Louis were safe, their futures shielded from deceit. I gazed out at the garden, sunlight dancing over the lavender and roses, and felt the profound weight of freedom and inner strength we had reclaimed. It was bittersweet. Memories of betrayal lingered, yet the relief and empowerment of standing firm brought a deep, enduring sense of liberation.